Stakeholders in the financial services industry and the technology space gathered at the Africa Fintech Foundry Disrupt 2019 conference, powered by Access Bank, to explore the theme Digital Gold Rush, Building a Sustainable Tech Economy.
The thing about banking is that there will be the traditional banks, the new banks, and the banks that will basically identify that inconvenience, those issues around the customers, and resolve those issues and redefine the market. So if you don't think of the new technology changes or things and recreate that future, you are gone with time. So the whole idea of today's conference is simple. We're going to be listening to thought leaders. We'll listen to people who are making big changes in different parts of the world. We're looking for people who are very strong from a technology standpoint and innovation standpoint, and learn from them.
It was an opportunity for seasoned innovation experts like Brett King to share the dynamics and change that the fourth industrial revolution is bringing to the banking industry and other spheres of life.
You don't need a plastic card and a point of sale system to do payments in this world. All you need is a mobile phone. In fact, Nigeria, it might surprise you, but Nigeria has a more modern and efficient payment system today than the United States. Do you know that? It's true. I can send money, person to person in Africa much faster than I can in the United States. It blows my mind, but that's because when the US looked at this problem, they said, how do we get checks onto a mobile phone? How do we get plastic cards inside a mobile phone? In Africa and China, we said, how do we send money from one person to another using a mobile phone? It was a different framing from a design expertise. So in the future, when you walk into a grocery store, like a Tesco's or Carrefour, I don't know what you guys have out here, but you walk in to get your groceries. If you don't have enough cash in your bank account to buy your groceries today, your phone will tell you, hey, it looks like you need some more cash to do your groceries. Would you like a credit facility to do that? You won't have to go to a bank branch to apply for a credit card. You won't need plastic. You won't need a 16-digit number. You won't need to sign a piece of paper. It'll work out based on your behavior, your balance of your account, and what you generally spend at the grocery store. It'll know whether you need credit. This is experiential design. In the future, the banks that are really performing in terms of mortgages will be those that know that you want to buy a home, that can predict that you want to buy a home, not that you've asked the bank to loan money for a home or a mortgage. Because the advantage will be, I need to know that before you ask me. If I have to wait for you to ask me for a mortgage, I'm not going to get the business. I'm going to miss out. And in the future, even with corporate banking, we'll be getting advice in real time through things like our head-up display with our smart glasses. You can't afford to do this. You can't afford to buy that new smartphone or laptop. You got to pay the rent on Tuesday. This will be this ecosystem. Who's the biggest bank in the world in 2030? Who's doing this right? Who's applying all of this technology in a way to succeed? Who do you have to compete against in the future if you're a bank? It's not another bank. It's a technology company. The biggest bank in the world will be Ant Financial by 2030. So, think of it this way. If you're in Africa today and you're trying to build the power system, the energy to supply the African continent for the next 20, 30 years, do you stick up wooden poles and put wires across them? Or do you apply solar panels? That's what banking has to be like. We're not going to have branches, signatures on a piece of paper anymore. We're building it from scratch using technologies available that make banking embedded in customers' lives. And that is Bank 4.0. Thank you very much.
The event featured panel sessions, master classes, and fireside chats on the issues around growth funding for tech startups, gaming and artificial intelligence, fintech, regtech, and digital financial systems. Keynote speaker at the conference, Brett King, the GMD CEO of Access Bank, Mr. Herbert Wigwe, former CEO Diamond Bank Nigeria, Mr. Uzoma Dozie, ED Digital and IT Operations, Access Bank, Mr. Ade Bajomo, Head Africa Fintech Foundry, Mr. Shegun Adeniyi, and other speakers give their perspective on the AFF Disrupt 2019 conference, Banking 4.0, and the future of technology and financial services.
I think Banking 4.0 is not just about banks, it's about people providing banking services. And as you know, there are a lot of organizations now in this country that are providing either lending or savings products for consumers. But how do you scale it? And that's what Brett King ended on. If it's not scalable, then it's something that is not sustainable into the future. And there are a lot of speakers here today that are going to create awareness in terms of building that digital ecosystem that can be scaled.
The whole idea about Banking 4.0 is that we're redefining and creating a future for banking in the next 5 to 10 years. We've seen the fundamental changes that have happened over the past 10 years, and we think that the rate of change of technology is actually going to move at a faster pace over the next 10 years. Our expectation is that we should get it right, and if we do, the level of financial inclusion will basically increase. The pace of financial inclusion will increase. The level of financialization that we see, which basically has positive impact on our economy, will also increase. But what is important, though, is what we need to do today, all right, to ensure that Access Bank and the entire financial services sector creates the appropriate building blocks for ourselves over the period. The world in itself is changing. You see big changes in China. You see not that big in the US, but in the rest of Asia, we're seeing great things happen. And I think that we have a rare opportunity to leapfrog, all right, and create strong financial services institutions in our country, however defined, all right, that will best identify, all right, and create a new experience for customers, all right, and help to ensure that our country as a whole does very well.
You know, the world is actually digital now, and the future is digital, which tells us that if digital is data, then it tells us that the future is golden, so to speak. And let me explain what I'm talking about, data and the future and golden. It's about leveraging data to get new insights about your customers, about your business, and drive unprecedented levels of economic growth and drive engagement in the society as well. So if you look at financial services, everybody talks about financial services and fintechs and disruption and disruptors and all of that, whole ecosystem as a were really. What technology is doing is that now that we're in the fourth industrial revolution, you know, what used to take centuries, even years and months before are now taking days. It means that financial services and, if you like, fintech companies and other tech companies have to collaborate and at unprecedented levels, you know, and start innovating to create and solve problems like we've never solved before. Create durable user experiences, you know, give engaging personalization, you know, in a country with 200 million people. Imagine a bank with 25 million people. You know, how do you serve 25 million people? It's data that allows you to actually drill down and know what each individual likes and allows you to personalize a service to that individual. So that's what this is about. That's how we see financial services changing over the years to come. It's going to be driven by data, and that data is going to drive personalization, engagement, durable customer experiences, lifestyle, and indeed, quite frankly, economic growth and development.
Beyond the conference, one of the things we're looking to achieve is, one, create in the minds of people the idea, the thought process around positioning themselves with innovative ideas that is going to help with disruption in the new digital economy. And what I mean about the new digital economy is we believe very strongly that data is going to be the currency in that economy. So transactions will not be driven primarily from the naira and kobo and dollar and pound sterling that we know of today, and is going to be primarily based on platforms and exchange of data. We think that there are some technologies that will primarily drive that. So I'm speaking specifically around robotics, which would be enabling systems to do what humans do today and beyond. and introducing self-learning and predictability into some of those things. Artificial intelligence, I'm talking beyond predictive analysis into using AI to make and influence decisions. So beyond all of those, I see a future where even communication between human beings will be done by systems.
I think when you look at banking and where banking is coming from, and more importantly where it's going, it's very clear to me that exponential technologies will essentially enable and drive our banking industry going forward. You raise an interesting point about financial inclusion. Financial inclusion speaks to a massive retail opportunity, which I think the only way to reach and serve in an optimum way that massive retail opportunity is by the use of exponential technology. So we need to leverage these technologies in order to reach, serve, and for all intents and purposes, bank the lifestyle of this retail mass market that exists out there.
Tell us the innovation around Banking 4.0 and why it's important for the Nigerian financial services industry.
So when we talk about Bank 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, there are various ages of the banking or phases of banking defined really by technology adoption. So Bank 2.0 was around self-service banking, started with ATM machines, then internet banking. Bank 3.0 was the smartphone. Bank 4.0 though is really how banking becomes embedded in the world around us with these technologies and really requires us to think very differently about how we build a bank. It needs to be technology first and banking second, which is really the big shift.
And looking at the shifts and first principle design you talked about, give us more insight into that and how that can be achieved in Nigeria where you need financial inclusion to scale.
So if you look at historically, the most disruptive innovations throughout history all share something in common. It's this first principles design thinking. So what that means is rather than take an existing business and try and introduce technology into it to improve on it, you basically start from scratch. You say, taking all this technology we have today, how would we build this from scratch, starting new, and what would it look like? So you have good examples of that. The automobile, how it disrupted transportation and the horse and cart. The SpaceX rocket, how it's changed space travel. Or the iPhone, how it really redefined the smartphone. In banking, if we start from scratch, you say, how do you send money from one person to another? In Nigeria, we have MTN Money, we have M-Pesa in Kenya. Frankly, if you look in Africa today, most Africans can send money person to person faster and more efficiently than in the United States, which still uses paper checks. So this is the big thing. If you take a first principles approach, you start to think about ways that banking can be built into people's lives using the technology we have today.
And the fintechs play a very key role here. Collaboration is very important. So what would you be saying to banks in Nigeria in the area of collaboration with the fintech ecosystem in the country?
Well, fintech investment is exploding in Africa right now. We think that we could exceed $5 billion of investment in fintech this year in the African continent, so that's huge. But here's the point, is that the new players that are coming up that can really leverage this technology, they can actually deploy this capital very efficiently, more efficiently than traditional banks. Because traditional banks have to change their existing systems and go through these massive processes. But when you're a fintech, you can start from scratch without any of those constraints. You don't have legacy system constraints or process and policy constraints, so you can be very efficient at producing something quite dynamic. This is also why we see a lot of banks starting to work with fintechs, because they realize they can do it faster and cheaper than we can.
One of the major highlights of the AFF Disrupt 2019 is the need for banks, fintechs, and other tech players to collaborate and explore how to apply first principle design, which will be critical to deepening financial inclusion and achieving scale in the financial services industry.